It's Monday, the 16th of May, 2022. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Amyler.
Good morning, Michael.
All right, Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's jump into it. We are just 5 days away now, Sean, from the federal election. So it's getting pretty exciting. Even if you're not a political junkie, this is an exciting week. Prime Minister Scott Morrison officially launched the coalition's re-election campaign yesterday, 5 weeks after the election was announced, 1 week before we head to the polls. He was speaking in Brisbane and said Australia has prevailed and says the country is on the edge of a new opportunity.
Yes, it had all the usual razzmatazz of a campaign launch. Notably, it was more forward-looking and optimistic than much of the coalition campaign so far, which has been pushing the line that people can't trust Labor. Certainly, the coalition is behind in the polls, and the betting groups have Labor as odds-on favourite to win on Saturday. 3 years ago, Mr Morrison wasn't supposed to win. Remember that? Though he did pull it off. This time around, the polls aren't quite as close. The Prime Minister yesterday said better days are ahead, but they can't be taken for granted. His big pitch yesterday was a housing policy that would allow older Australians to downsize and put money into their pensions, and first home buyers will be able to access a responsible portion of their own super to invest in their first home. Mr Morrison said a re-elected coalition government will provide cost of living relief and will also manage money better. And as has been the coalition line the whole time, Scott Morrison said it was better on defence and national security. Anthony Albanese had a spoiler conference yesterday. He said he'd spend nearly $1 billion on strengthening Medicare to make it easier to see a GP. Very exciting 5 days in front of us.
Yeah, you're right there. Sean, story number 2, the markets was a bit of a roller coaster last week, quite a tumultuous ride. Where did we finish up the week and where are we starting this week?
Well, it certainly looks a bit better as we go into our first trading day of the week. On Wall Street, stocks rallied at the end of a really chaotic week, helped by comments from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell that bigger rate hikes, i.e. 75 basis points, are off the table for now. The S&P 500, which is very broad-based, jumped about 2.4% over the weekend. Nasdaq, which is full of tech stocks, jumped 3.7%. European markets jumped. The local market last week was up 2% on Friday. Really good. It all kind of looks better, but of course, this is at the end of 6 weeks of declines. Let's hope we get some more joy in financial markets this week.
All right, story number 3, Sean, and everyone's been talking about cryptocurrencies recently. And on Friday, we had the number 2 at the Reserve Bank, Michelle Bullock, warning that financial regulators are really on guard now to protect the financial system from crypto risks.
Yes, Ms. Bullock has suddenly become very interesting to the economic community because her boss, Philip Lowe, is due to step down in a little over 12 months. So she's a leading internal candidate. We're all hanging off whatever she says. She said on Friday that after a very volatile week in crypto land, stable coins aren't so stable anymore and cryptos are causing all sorts of problems. Remember last week, Terra USD stablecoin collapsed. Another one called Tether collapsed. Ms. Bullock says digital currencies aren't quite big enough to cause broader financial stability issues yet, but they might. Also, other regulators, Wayne Byers, who runs the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, and Asset Commissioner Kathy Armour have also warned about digital currencies. So too the Austrac CEO, Nicole Rose.
All right, story number 4, and of course it's Monday, so we need a bit of a property market update. It was a busy weekend for auctions, Sean, with listings up by a third.
Yes, really, it was the last week of autumn sales. Next week doesn't count because it's an election, so people don't tend to sell then. And then there's only one more weekend before we hit winter. So really, this last weekend was the last one. The national clearance rate was the lowest so far this year, 64.6%. There was a big jump in the number of auctions in Sydney, and the clearance rate was a touch higher at 61.1%. There are even more listings in Melbourne. Clearance rate there was 64%.
All right, story number 5, last one today. I'd much rather be finishing on something happy, some good news, Sean, but this is not such good news, particularly if you're looking to book a flight soon, because airfares seem like they've bottomed out and prices could actually be on the way up.
Bureau of Infrastructure and Transport Research economic statistics show airfares have either stabilised or are rising, which is exactly what's happened in the US. The cheapest available Perth-Sydney flight is back above $500 after falling as low as $408 in April, just after the Western Australia border reopened. And as the major airlines look to stimulate demand during the school holidays, cheap Melbourne-Sydney flights are now $165 rather than $110. That's what they were in January. The lowest Brisbane-Melbourne trip is about $228. Back in December, they're $133. So, Michael, bad news for all you flyers.
Yeah, certainly seems that way. All right, that's it. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 16th of May, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, then you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform, along with some interviews and plenty of other interesting listening. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.